Episode 70. The Value of Yes. Introducing Lee Pace on the BTS Creative Academy podcast, Uncut. With me, your host, Martin Colton. And we're in.
Cool.
Let's go.
Excellent.
So, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Lee Pace. Lee Pace, musician,
Yeah.
actor,
Yeah.
podcaster.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I can say yes now.
And clown.
Yes.
In fact, when I asked you recently, how would you describe yourself? I only got a one-word answer, didn't I?
Yeah.
Which was?
Clown. Yeah. I'm a professional clown. Professional jester.
Yes, you are. Very much so. Oh, mate, it's lovely to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It's been too long, man. I haven't seen you for ages.
No,
Do you know what I mean?
no, I barely recognise it. I don't even know how long it's been.
It's been too long.
It has been a very long time. But before we get into it, there is a tradition that's
There
building
is.
up with this. You know the tradition.
I know the tradition.
Oh, man.
I'm on point, man.
Oh, man, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. It's such a basic thing, but it's
joyous.
It's joyous. Come on, after three.
after
1, 2, 3. And we're in the zone. The podcast has started. It's so beautiful that people are listening.
Oh, no, it's great.
Yeah.
It's great. It's a lovely feeling, isn't it?
It is
When
nice.
you put something out there and somebody says, I'm enjoying that.
Yeah, and you put a bit of work into it, you know. You try hard at something and people go, oh, well done.
Yeah.
Little thumbs up, little
Yeah.
like here and there.
That's it.
Or you hear that someone joined you and has listened to some of it.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I better do the clap. Because how else? I'm not part of the group if I don't do the clap.
Yeah, I
So,
don't feel like you're part of it. Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
which is amazing. So, let's get on to you then,
Cool.
Lee. So, how have you been?
I'm good, thank you, man.
What's happening in the world at the moment?
Oh, all sorts, mate, all sorts. Busy with performing, which is always good. I'll never complain about that. Do you know what I mean? It's when you're doing something you enjoy and you get the opportunity to do it as often as you can, then you know that's always a good thing.
When we say performing, in what sense? What we do?
So at the moment, it's musically with me and him. It was a duo that myself and my good mate Chris Priest have been performing together now for 16 years, I think, as a duo.
And funny enough, I've known you all this. I've known you probably 20 years now.
Yeah, if not more, mate. Yeah.
And I've never seen you as me and him.
No.
Which I'm ashamed to say, and I apologise. And
Yeah,
I will.
where are you, man?
I will fix
Gigging
that.
at the weekend. Get your backside
Like
down
I've
there.
seen you perform as a solo, but I've not seen you as me and him. And
Yeah.
my first question with that is, who's me and who's him?
It's a question that's been asked on many, many occasions, and we still don't have an answer for it. A lot of it depends on who you ask.
Right.
So, like, if you ask me, most of the time I'm me and he's him. But occasionally that could differ depending on whether or not there's blame involved.
Occasionally you're him and he's me.
Absolutely.
And, wow, that must get confusing.
Yeah, it's fine. I've answered to lots of things over the years, so either me or him is absolutely fine.
So what else is going, apart from your music stuff, is there anything generally going on in life at the moment for you?
So, I mean, just, you know, I don't do performing full time. I'd love to, but, you know, I have a job. I have a 9 to 5. I have a family. I have a wife. I have a daughter. And that takes up, you know, not a lot of time, but it's something that I obviously, you know, I want to focus on, as well as being able to do other bits and pieces.
Yeah.
So, you know, if I'm not at home with the family, then I'm out being a clown.
Like your performing side of your life is part of your life, but it's not. It's not the whole of it, is it? It's not It's not necessarily even the core of it.
No, not anymore. It was for many years. It was performing for me, whether it be, and to be fair, the musical thing really is only, like I said, in the last maybe 15, 16 years. Prior to that, it was stage performances. You know, musicals, bit of Shakespeare thrown in every now and again. Panto, you know, I did.
You did a big stint of Panto, didn't you?
Panto, yeah. So probably give or take around about a decade, about 9-10 years at the Playhouse, consecutive years.
Which is quite a big theatre community. It's a big local theatre, isn't it? A big local theatre. What does it seat? About 500?
Yeah.
500 people.
450, 500, depending on how you lay it out.
For about 10 years, you was there every year as the
Yeah.
What was the position called? It was like the comedy duo.
The comics.
The comics.
Comics, yeah. Clowns.
The clowns.
Yeah. So that's, I am silly for other people's entertainment, and that's been something I've done all the way through, and still do now. Me and him is in no way what I would call a professional outfit. We mess around, we take the mickey out of people, we take the mickey out of each other, and occasionally you might get a song thrown in. But it's about us enjoying being in other people's company. Do you know what I mean? It's really weird. Sometimes you'll turn up to a gig, and somebody's hired a hall for an occasion, and there's a small stage in the hall, and they're like, "Oh, we thought we'd put you up on the stage because that's where performance should be, on the stage." And I'm like, "Well, we can, or we can set up in front of the stage with everybody else, so that we can be a part of it as well." Do you know what I mean? Because the more distance you put between yourself as a performer and your audience, the further away you get, the more difficult it is to get that connection with the audience.
So you get in there, you get in the crowd.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely, yeah. As close as we can get. In fact, Chris has now recently bought a wireless mic. So he literally can just walk out into the crowd and start messing around and dancing with people.
And what type of gigs are these?
It depends. So primarily when we first set it up, we were looking at doing like private hire function stuff, so weddings, birthdays, that sort of thing. But actually, quite quickly into that, we realised that there's a whole like genre of gigs that we hadn't thought about, which is like your pubs, your social clubs and things like that. And we started gigging regularly in the pubs and the clubs in this area. And yeah, that's... For me, don't get me wrong, I love doing a wedding. It's lovely doing a wedding, but it's different to when you're just doing a gig in a pub.
In what sense?
So there's a lot more pressure with a wedding gig. Personally, I don't know whether or not that transpires to everyone else, but for, a wedding's a big day for people. They've put a lot of money, a lot of planning into it, a lot of time. They've invested into it. It's their
They hope it's going to be one day.
Exactly.
Most of them go in with that idea, don't they? I think most.
Yeah. I think that's still an acceptable thing.
I think that's still the status quo. We'll do this today, and then we're done with that.
We're done with that. We don't need to do it again. Yeah. So and you turn up.
So it's important.
It is important, and I realise that. The music in the evening for the reception is not the biggest part of the day for those people. They've had the ceremony, they've had the meal, they've had the speeches. That's all very personal to them. That's something that they're very connected to. And in the evening, all they want to do is let their hair down and have a laugh. Let some energy out, have a dance. But I still feel that, when you're doing a gig like that, there is a lot of pressure, because if you muck something up, you're mucking up their big day. Do you know what I mean?
What kind of things can go wrong? Being such a seasoned performer as yourself.
So we had an incident a few years back where we were playing a wedding, and the first dance, they'd asked us to play the original track rather than play it ourselves, which is absolutely fine. Don't have an issue with that. Do you know what I mean? But they'd given to us on a CD, which we promptly put in the CD player, press play, and it played the first 10 seconds and then stopped. And there's just a room full of people, all standing around the bride and groom, arm in arm.
Ready, waiting to go.
Just looking at us going, "Where's the music?" And you're like, "I'm really sorry. It's the CD, it's corrupted, I can't do anything." But actually, they saw the funny side of it. They were fine about it. It wasn't really our fault. It was a corrupted CD. There was nothing we could actually do about it.
But I can imagine you sweating in that moment.
Man, all eyes, do you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah. When the rooms are, it's looking at you.
All the parents and the grandparents are scowling at you, and you're like, "I'm really sorry. I can't."
So what did you do?
I think Chris tried to restart the track. It still didn't work, so we pulled something out of our backside and just played a lovey-dovey, slowy song, just so they could have their first dance.
Yes,
it wasn't the one they wanted, but they could have their first.
It still
dance.
Happened.
People could take videos. People could take pictures. It still. I was saying to people, like, keep taking pictures. In a photo, you won't know that there's no music. Just keep taking pictures. It's fine. But yeah, we got through it. But yeah, when those sorts of things happen, it can be a little butt clenching.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas, if I was in a pub
Mm-hmm.
and we went to play a song on, a CD or something and it skipped, I'd just go, well, we're not doing that. And we'd move on and do something else and nobody would care.
No.
Do you know what I mean? So there's that difference in pressure between those two scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, don't get me wrong, I enjoy doing one as much as the other. But there is a difference in the amount of pressure that I feel.
Yes.
When you're doing those.
And you're doing this this is something you love, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So when you love it that much, maybe you don't, if you're not desperate for the money, because I imagine a wedding will pay more.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
if you're not desperate for that big paycheck,
Yep.
then maybe you do the thing that you enjoy a little bit more. Like you said, you've got your normal 9 to 5. So this is your side hustle and your side hustle / hobby.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's also me being able to get out and do something that I enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy connecting with an audience and making someone making someone laugh or making someone happy about something, or doing something that means that person now is in a different state of mind as they were earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't matter whether or not you're doing music. It's exactly the same as when you're doing something on stage.
Mm-hmm.
You're still connecting with the audience. You're still bringing that audience into your world.
Yeah, this sounds like something that's really important to you.
Yeah, massively.
How does that feel?
How do you mean?
Yeah, like, how does that feel to you? What does that give to you?
Gratification.
Mm-hmm.
Massively. I love it. Like some people, I don't necessarily fall into this category necessarily, because maybe I'm of a generation that kind of passed it by. But like nowadays, people put stuff on the internet, they put stuff on Instagram, and the reason they do that is to get the likes. It's to see those numbers going up and knowing that people are clicking on that and they're liking that. And that people get gratification from that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same process. But for me, rather than a like or somebody has seen this, to have an actual human being clap and go, well, that's for me.
Yes, yeah. It's not a bad thing to get gratification. It's a blessing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, like you say, with the social media thing, I do worry about the generation coming up, that their only experience of gratification is through social likes.
Yeah, absolutely.
On a platform, it's not like we started that at the beginning of this, didn't we? Actually, gratification. Yeah. The gratification that I'm getting from doing the podcast is lovely, but that's from you sitting down saying well done.
Yeah.
The numbers and the figures and the likes they're nice.
They're nice. They're nice to have.
Yeah, but they're not what's driving me forward with this.
No,
it's moments like this that's driving me forward, and the same with your music, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. At the end, there's nothing. I've always said there's nothing better. At the end of a night in a pub somewhere, it's 11:30. Music's got to stop in a minute now. People are absolutely up for it. They've had a few beers, and you start Mr. Brightside, and the place kicks off. Doesn't matter if there's 5 people or 50 people. When it kicks off and everyone's singing along and everyone's bouncing around, and you think, I've done that. If I wasn't here doing this, they wouldn't be doing that. And that, to me, is the reason why I do what I do. Yeah. Is to see that change in someone, to have that effect on someone. That's why I do what I do.
Was it different when you were doing Panto? Or
No,
was it the same,
it's exactly
same
the
thing?
same. Exactly the same. Different scenario.
Different demographic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. There was a lot more kids involved in
kids
the
and grandparents. Yeah.
But it's the same thing. It's people talk about this fourth wall, don't they? In theatre, you get the fourth wall, and I love nothing more than breaking that fourth wall and connecting directly. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't work in every single situation. There are going to be productions and shows that you do where actually breaking the fourth wall would damage what you're doing, and actually it would detract from what you're trying to achieve. So you have to pick your moments.
Or the type of show, like you say. You're not going to do it necessarily in Romeo and Juliet, but you would in a pantomime.
Exactly. And that ability to do that and to directly connect with that one person, even if it's just that one person in the audience, and you say something to them and they get a kick out of that, now that person's like, oh, I'm in the show, I'm involved.
And those moments can live with that person for the rest of their life, can't
they
it?
did with me.
Yes, I was going to. Yeah, the same. Same
They
with
did
me.
with me.
Same with me in my early days of going to a pantomime.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved
In
it.
fact, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if it wasn't for the pantomimes that I saw 30 years ago.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. Me and Mum used to go and watch the Panto at Harlow Playhouse every year, every Christmas, guaranteed we'd go and watch it. And it was just joy. Do you know what I mean? Just laughing at the silly people and singing along, and dancing about.
So was you watching as a kid? Was you at the same theatre that you went on to perform in as an adult?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, same place.
And so is that kind of where it started for you then, watching it?
Kind of. I'd always enjoyed watching Panto. Like I said, we used to go every year. And I had never made the connection that I could do that. It wasn't a thing that even, it wasn't even on my radar. And, I was growing up, going through primary school, maybe, I don't know, 10, 11 years old, something like that. And I used to live next door to Chris, who is in Me and Him. So we grew up together.
Wow.
From the age of like 6 years old, we lived next door to each
Pretty
other.
strong bond then.
Yeah.
I got that from listening to your podcast, that the bond is strong.
Yeah, I've been trying to get rid of him for 30 odd years, and he's still there. One day maybe, unless you're watching this, in which case I love you very much. But yeah, so and his dad Derek had been involved in amateur theatre in the town in Harlow and surrounding areas, and he'd been doing stuff at the Playhouse, and he'd enrolled Chris into a theatre workshop. And Chris was enjoying it. He was having a laugh, and he said to me, "Oh, I'm going to theatre tonight." And I was like, "Oh, what do you mean?" He said, "Oh, I'm part of this group. It's called Stage Directions." I was like, "Oh." He said, "Do you want to come along?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll give that a go." I'd never performed at this point. I'd never aimed to be a performer, but I knew that I didn't have an issue with being the centre point of focus. Do you know what I mean? I was fine with that. If I could make someone laugh, if I could draw a picture and make someone's day, or make them laugh or make them smile, then I knew that was something that I enjoyed. And I was like, well, I'll give it a go. So I went along, and again, talking about pantos from years past, I walked into the first session of Stage Directions that I'd gone to, which was at Braesgrove School at the time, in their theatre, in their drama hall. And I walked in. I didn't know anyone in there apart from Chris. But the guy who was taking the workshop was a man who I think you know very well, Mr. Paul Johnson.
Yes.
Shifter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, the previous 2 years of panto that I'd watched, he was a comic. So I walked in, and I was starstruck. Straight away, I went, I know him. He's the funny guy.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I did that workshop. We played some games, and we did some improvisation and bits and pieces. And at that moment, that workshop, I went, yeah, I've found my people. I know where I want to be now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I knew that this was something that I enjoyed, and it was something I wanted to do.
What did finding your people look like to you at that age?
So it was, I've always been an extrovert. I've always enjoyed, like I said, pulling focus, being the centre of attention, never bothered me. Do you know what I mean? I was fine with that in certain situations. But I could become an introvert if I wanted to be. If I wasn't happy, I could reel it in a bit. And obviously, those early teenage years, it's difficult. Your hormones are all over the place. Your brain chemicals are all over the place. You don't know what you want.
No, you don't really know
you
who you
really
are.
know who you are.
No.
You haven't found yourself.
Yeah.
And, and you think you are what you are. You're not. But you don't find that out until later. That's just life, unfortunately. But being in that room and being with all those other people that I'd never met before, I suddenly realised that all of these people were just like me. And they all wanted to do the same thing. And they all had the same interest. And we all had the same common goal. And I was like, I feel, it sounds really cliche, but I was like, I feel like I'm home.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable here. Do you know what I mean? Like
And at that age, that's so important, isn't it?
massively.
Yeah.
Massively.
Whether it's with theatre or football or music,
Exactly. Yep.
it's just finding something, isn't
Yes,
it? At that age,
absolutely.
at that point in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's really important. Really important because, I think you don't want to put too much pressure on kids. Certainly at that age, you can't force them into doing things.
No.
You have to let them make their choices. And that might not be the first choice. They might go and try something and come back and go, nah, didn't enjoy it. And you're like, fine, no worries. We'll try the next thing. When that crops up, we'll go and have a go and we'll see what we get on. But I'd nailed it. I knew that from that point, this was something that I enjoyed doing. It was something that I had a passion for that I probably hadn't realised previously that there was that much passion there for it. And yeah, it was a real eye-opening moment for me, and I'll never look back from that point.
So did you start as acting?
Yeah.
And performing?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'd been going to stage directions for, I don't know, say 2 years, maybe a bit less, I'm not sure really, it was a long time ago. And they'd done some productions while I was there at that point, and I'd never auditioned. I was happy doing the workshops, and that was fun, and I could stand up in front of the people in the room, and I could be a clown, and it was fine. It wasn't an issue for me. And it was that step, it was that boundary of, do I audition for a show and actually do this in front of other people that I don't know? Or do I just stay in my comfort zone and not do anything? But I'd gone to support the shows that they'd done, and we were at a workshop one day, and they turned around and said, we're holding open auditions for a show that we're going to be doing at the Playhouse in Harlow, in the studio theatre upstairs. And it's Adrian Mole, age 13 3/4. Open auditions are going to be on this day. Come along if you're interested. You don't have to register, just turn up and we'll do the auditions. And I was like, what have I got to lose? Do you know what I mean? So I went to the audition, and it was directed by a guy called Alan Jones, I believe.
Yes, I know Alan. He was one of my first directors as well, Alan Jones, yeah. And
he was directing the show, so he was holding the auditions. And so we had to read a little bit. There were loads of kids there, do you know what I mean? They were all about my age. Loads of kids there, reading the bits and pieces, did the audition. And they said, right, well, I think we've probably got an answer. If you guys want to wait outside, and we'll call you back in. So we're waiting there, and I got in. I got a part. And it was my first ever audition, and I got accepted, and that made me really happy.
What do you think would have happened to you if you hadn't have found that?
Now, this is an interesting question, because the part I got in that show was Adrian Mole.
Right.
So my first ever audition, I got the lead role in the show.
Wow. Right. Okay. So you jumped straight in at the deep end.
And then there was another show after that I auditioned for, that I got into, one of the main parts. And then there was another show, and then there was another show, and then there was another show. And I kept getting into these shows. And I got to the point where I don't want to sound big-headed, but I was like, I'm probably all right at this.
Yeah. This is something that I do.
It's something that I do.
Yeah.
I'm obviously all right at it. Otherwise, I wouldn't keep getting the parts. I wouldn't keep getting accepted. And then it was probably 92, 91, 92, somewhere around there. No, it would have been later than that. 93 maybe, 94. Just before the Playhouse closed, I auditioned for Panto. And I got rejected. First round. And it was the first time I'd ever been rejected for a show.
Because you were jumping up into going to that adult world all of a sudden, weren't you? You've been part of your youth group.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, right, and a very similar thing happened to me. Part of my youth group, very much at home, leading the way, and then went into the adult world, and I was nothing all of a sudden. Maybe a bit too big for my boots.
Yeah, absolutely. And
do you think similar?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't disagree at all. And I was devastated, absolutely devastated, because I'd never experienced that before. And I was lucky in some respects that I'd never experienced that before. But that taught me a lot, because I was chatting to someone about it, And they turned around to me and said, well, it's not necessarily that you're not good enough. It might have been that you're not right for what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh. So they didn't necessarily reject me because I was bad. They rejected me because I didn't fit into what they had planned.
Which is pretty much always the way, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you learn that. I learned that quite quickly, but I think in general, people in the industry or who have experienced, even, certainly in amateur theatre, that is normally the case. It's not necessarily that they don't like you.
It's not a personal, it's very rarely a personal rejection, isn't
absolutely.
it?
Absolutely. And, it was, at that age, I was 14, 15. I wasn't old enough to be a principal part in the panto, so that was right out. I was too old to be chorus, so the only option really would have been senior chorus, and I can't dance.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the whole point of a senior chorus.
Where do you fit in?
Where do you fit in?
Yeah.
You don't fit in. And I was like, okay, fair enough. So, you chalk it up to experience. But then, like I said, the Playhouse closed down, and that, it wasn't available as something, as a usable space anymore. And that worried me slightly, because that had been, my base of operations for years. It's like a second
your
home.
Yeah.
I probably spent more time there than I did at home. And it was gone. And that was worrying.
And when you say gone, for those who don't know the local history, what happened there?
So there was a decision made by the council, I believe, that the Playhouse would be better used for other purposes or something like that. There's probably someone out there who will correct me on that, who knows the actual history. But all the funding was pulled for it, and it was closed. The building was closed down. Everyone was let go, and that was it. And I was certainly convinced that was the end of it, and that it was never gonna happen again. As we now know, excuse me, it did eventually reopen. But during that time, I still had the need, the want, the passion to continue performing. And luckily, at that time, and I believe probably is still the case today, there are lots of other options available in the area. There were other theatre companies about. I went and did some stuff for Moot House Players. I went and did some stuff for the Sawbridge Players. Harlow Theatre Company still existed. I came and did some shows here. Again, Shifter directed Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe in 95, 96, wherever it was. Came and did that here. So I could keep that going, and I realised I didn't have to do everything in the Playhouse. I could do stuff elsewhere.
And find new groups, new people.
New people, yeah. And, the people that were at the Playhouse that, were performing at the time and were part of that group splintered out, and we were all over the place. And you constantly bump into people that you'd done stuff before with in other places, and it still felt like a community. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was, I carried on until probably I turned, 17, 18 maybe a bit later. And I grew up a little bit, and I realised that actually I should probably get a job.
So was there a point where you was like, then maybe I could do this professionally, or did that not really ever cross your mind? Or
I'd thought about it, yeah, of course. I'd be lying.
I think most performers do think, wouldn't this be the life?
Yeah.
Getting money coming in for the thing I love.
Absolutely. Go to Hollywood, be a film star.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We all go through it.
Yeah.
But no, I never pursued it, really. I never pursued it. But yeah, I left school, I got a job, bought a car, and I started doing other things. There were other things that took priority over performing. And I think at that point, if I'm true to myself, I'd probably got to a point where I was like, I think I'm done at the stage. I think I'm happy now. I've done a bit. I'm all right. If I never do another one, I'll probably be, it's a sad thought, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I think most of us actually go through that as well. We have that thing of, we could, maybe break Hollywood, but also on the other side of that, we go, I'm kind of, I'm kind of done.
Yeah.
Maybe if the last show weren't that great a show, you're a bit, or the community around that show weren't so great as some of the ones earlier on.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you reminisce on.
Yeah.
So then you sit back and you go, what am I doing with my life? Especially as you go making that leap into adulthood.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I'm not going to lie, there were some shows that I did during that time that I didn't necessarily enjoy. I was doing them because
part of the routine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing a show. I had to do a show. I should be doing a show. So I went and did a show.
And you can do that when you're younger.
Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah, but that gets a hell of a lot harder once you start going, right, I want a car now.
Yeah.
I want somewhere to live and I want to go out and, finances, basically.
Yeah. You've got to start getting an income.
Responsibilities start happening.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So then you can't just go, I'll just do whatever show comes along.
No. And, and I'd got to that point and I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. And then, a couple of years went past and early 2000s, I got a phone call from somebody I hadn't spoken to in many years. Somebody I believe you know quite well as well, Anthony Osborne.
Yes, yeah.
Got a phone
within this world, we do have everyone has mutual friends, don't they? Within the community theatre world.
Absolutely.
And over the 20, 30 years, it's very hard to not find a mutual friend.
There's always a connection.
There's
somewhere.
always a connection, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Oz phoned me out of the blue, and he was like, "You're right, Pacey. What are you doing?" It's like, "Not a lot, mate. Just living my life." It's like, "Listen, I'm doing a show. We're doing it at the Playhouse, which had reopened during this time. I've cast it and I've started rehearsals, but there's one part that I can't cast. It's not a massive part. He's got maybe 2 lines, but he's on stage quite a bit, so I don't want to lose the character. Would you consider coming and doing it?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually, yeah."
Because once you start this, it is something you can always have as part of your life.
Yeah, exactly.
You can pick it up and put it down every now and then, but it could stay with you forever, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I said, yeah, I'll come and do it. So I did, and that was a show called The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, which was done on the main stage at the Playhouse, and I really enjoyed it. I had such a laugh, and during that production, I met someone called Nathan Stickley, who became a very, very good friend very, very quickly. We bonded really quick. And
I only ever knew you two as like a couple.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't one without the other.
Yeah, we were inseparable for a long time. And it was during that show that I met him. And funnily enough, we'd finished a show one evening, and I'm in the dressing room, sorting myself out, and Nathan comes flying into the dressing room, nearly takes the door off its hinges. And he's like, "Pacey, my sister's outside. She wants to meet you. You got to come out quick." I'm like, "Mate, can I get dressed first? I don't think that's appropriate. Let me put some clothes on, and I'll come and meet your sister, all right?" And so I went out, and I met his sister, and we've been married for 20 years.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So I met my wife through theatre.
Through your best friend.
Through my best friend who'd been my best friend for all of 5 minutes.
Oh really? Oh, at that point, 5 minutes.
Same show, exactly.
Right,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'd only really just met him.
Yeah.
But we were already, inseparable. And as you said, we stayed that way for quite a few years.
You did, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. Where one went, the other wasn't far behind.
No. Because then you became that double act within the pantomimes, didn't you?
Yeah. So it started the first panto we did. Myself and Nathan got cast as the comics. That was 2001, I want to say, maybe.
See, this is about the time where I start becoming part of the theatre community.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it was shortly after that panto that I think we did West Side Story.
Yes, yeah. Did I see you in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was the first time I met you.
Yes, we did that at the studio. Stuart Miller directed that.
Right, yeah.
At the studio, yeah. Yes. Which Nathan was in.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was after that we did the panto. And then we probably did another 2 or 3 pantos after that with the two of us. And then there was a year when the comics, rather than being 2, they wanted 3 comics. So it was kind of like a Marx Brothers type of thing. You
became like a trio then, didn't you?
Absolutely. So you had the mute, and then the straight man, the goon, and the mute. Whereas normally you just have the straight man and the goon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when Dan James,
a fellow clown,
a fellow goon, came in, and myself, Nathan, and Dan did Itchy Scratchy Bro in that panto. And then Nathan kind of, that was his point where he went, I think I'm done for a little while, and he kind of, parted ways.
Yeah.
And then me and Dan continued panto for the next 7-8 years, whenever it was.
And had a beautiful little run, didn't you?
Fantastic little run, mate. I'm so lucky to have been able to have that experience. Because, you look back on it now, and it's just like, what a wild ride that was. Because it wasn't just panto, because there were shows in between as well. Things like West Side Story.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a musical, and then you might have a Shakespeare, and then there's another panto. And then there's a musical, and you might have a bit of Shakespeare, and then there's a panto. And I just went from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and just continued all the way through.
Mm-hmm. And was this a different continuation of going from next to next to next than that thing of, let's just do the next thing because it's available?
Absolutely, yeah.
In what way was it different?
I wasn't doing things because I felt like I needed to do them. I was doing them because I wanted to do them. Because it sounds like an addiction, doesn't it? I could have walked away at any point.
I could have put it down.
I could have put it down. I could have.
I don't believe you.
No, I don't believe it either.
I don't believe you.
No.
This is your therapy for that, by the way.
It is, yeah. Desistant client.
Yeah.
Just lay back. Yeah. It wasn't. It was different. It was different because I didn't feel like I was doing it because I had to do it. I was doing it because I wanted to do it and I enjoyed doing it. And then, it got to the point where, like I say, I got married. And that was the one panto I missed in that run. But because I was on honeymoon.
Because you had life.
I had a life.
Yeah.
But I did go back and crew it.
Okay. You couldn't stay away that much.
No, I was stagehand for that one. But yeah, and I had a family. I had a wife. I had a house. I had a job, and you have to start looking at. They call it work-life balance, don't they? Mm-hmm. But you have to kind of start looking at it from that point of view. To do a show is a big commitment. It's not just the 5, 10, 30 nights that you're doing for the show. It's the months prior to that.
All the rehearsals, yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're rehearsing 2-3 nights a week, all day Sundays, however the rehearsal schedule worked out. Mm-hmm. And, I was working Monday through Saturday, 8:30 until 5:30. Mm-hmm. 2-3 nights I was out at rehearsals. Sunday I was at rehearsals. And at this point, towards the end of this, was when the music thing started to creep in and it all started to overlap. And all of a sudden, I was working 6 days a week. I was out rehearsing 2-3 nights a week. I was rehearsing all day Sunday. I was gigging Friday. I was gigging Saturday. I genuinely was never at home. Mm-hmm. And that started to have an effect.
Yeah, it does. I say this to my son's 18, mm-hmm. and he's just starting to go out into that adult world. And I say to him, all of a sudden, you're going to have to start to learn to juggle. Yeah. Yeah, that's essentially what it is. You've got all these things you're going to want to do, and you've got your hobbies, you've got your friends, you've got your family, and you've got to try and keep all them balls up in the air. And occasionally, you're going to drop one. You are going to drop one. And when you do, sometimes it's not going to be nice.
No, it's inevitable. It will happen. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you need that to learn. And you go, I can't do this. I can't juggle.
Yeah, sometimes you're trying to juggle 10 things. And you drop the ones that are actually important, like friends and family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was doing. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of juggling going on and something needed to give. And at that point, I decided that actually the stage performances was something that I would probably have to put on hold. I never said stop. I would put on hold until, different times. Because my family was important, my wife was important, of course, my home life was important. But I just started this new music thing, and I was going out and doing gigs for people, and that was new and exciting, and I didn't want to stop that.
How did that start? How was that? What was that moment like?
It's really interesting, man, because again, it wasn't something that I'd ever really considered, you know. And I want to make it very clear from the start. I don't consider myself a singer. I don't consider myself a musician. I don't consider myself an actor. I'm an entertainer. I can do enough of all of those to be dangerous, but I wouldn't specialise in any of them.
You kind of pull them all together, bits of the panto you're bringing into your musician stuff, rather than you're not just a man there with the guitar and a beautiful voice.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not saying you don't have a beautiful voice.
No, you were right first time. It's absolutely fine. No, it's, you know, I've never said that, you know, I'm the best singer in the world. I'm not. I know that, and I'm not the best musician. You know, I'm not even the best singer in Me and Him, let alone, you know what I mean? But I know enough to get by, and I can do enough to make an impression, and I can do enough to bring people on board. But yeah, so that's I wanted to learn guitar, and I started learning guitar by myself as a, you know, early teenage, tween kind of years, 12, 13, 14. Got myself a guitar. Bearing in mind this is way before the internet, so you couldn't just jump online and get a YouTube tutorial. And
there was a world before the internet?
There was a world before the internet.
How did people cope? What the hell did that look like?
It was a difficult time, man. You weren't there, man.
How did you buy things?
You had to leave the house and talk to people,
right?
And hand over actual money.
Really?
Yeah, I know.
Actual money?
Actual money, not virtual money.
You gave them your bank card? What did that look like?
None of that. Yeah, so yeah, I had to go to the shops and buy a book on guitar chords and tabs, and I'd sit there with the book and the guitar. And I don't know if you're familiar with tablature, but it's basically a little rectangle with lines across it to show you where the strings are, lines down to show you where the frets are, and little black dots. And the little black dots are where you put your fingers.
Yeah, I gave it a go. I was awful.
Everyone is, mate. That's the whole point.
Yeah,
that's the whole point. Everyone is. And over the course of a few years, I taught myself how to play basic chords. And I mean basic, you know, I could do the basic stuff. There's a couple of chords where you had to use your whole finger. I avoided songs with that in for a while because I couldn't do it. I've got big old fat fingers, and they just wouldn't work in the way I wanted them to work. Right. So I just got around it by just playing the basic chords. And I know it's an old adage, but, you know, if you learn 4 chords, you can play Beatles' back catalogue. Yeah. And that's you know, it's a simplification, but it's not out of the realms of possibility. So yeah, I messed around on guitar again, not to any decent standard, but I'd learnt some chords and whatnot, and it's really weird, man. So again, going back to me and Chris living next door to each other, when we never went to the same school, separate primary schools, separate secondary schools. Chris went to school in Sawbridgeworth, went to Leventhorpe, and 13, 14 years old, his family moved to Sawbridgeworth to make it easier for him to get to school. So we kind of lost contact for a little while during that secondary school period. We'd bump into each other every now and again. Again, before mobile phones, so I couldn't just text him. If I wanted to see him, I'd have to either phone his house or go and see him.
Jump on a bus.
Yeah. So yeah, we kind of... You know, we'd bump into each other occasionally. But then when, just before I got married, I moved in with Nathan and Helen into their home in Sawbridgeworth, only to discover that Chris lived about half a dozen doors down. And I randomly bumped into him one day and I was like, what are you? He said, I live there. I was like, I live there? Are you having a laugh? So we reconnected. You know, we were chatting away and whatever. Anyway, at the time, Chris was in a duo with his dad, and they were called Free Beer, which was a great sign to put outside a pub. Definitely
drew a few people in.
People in, absolutely. Tonight, free beer. Yeah.
What a disappointment when they're that's the potential. You might get them in the door, but they might.
They're going to scram out just as quick. Yeah. What do you mean I've got to pay for this? He says, right. Yeah. So they'd been.
Still, I like it.
Absolutely. It was a lovely gimmick. So Chris had taken over from a guy that Derek used to gig with, and they'd been doing it for a little while. And Derek decided that he wanted to retire. He wanted to give it up. He was going off to do other things. So Chris bumped into me and he said, "Oh, mate, just to let you know, me and my dad are playing our last gig together in Stansted at the weekend. Fancy coming down? Just watch the last gig." I was like, "Yeah, man, definitely. Thank you. I'll come and watch." So we did, and I don't know. We got chatting in the break or whatever, and Chris said, "You play a bit guitar, didn't you?" I said, "Well, yeah, a bit, yeah." And he was like, "Do you want to come up and do a song with me?" I was like, yeah, all right. Again, I don't mind being in front of people. Do you know what I mean? It's never bothered me. I was like, "Yeah, all right, fair enough. Give it a go." So we got up and we did Babylon, David Gray.
Mm-hmm.
One song, that's all it was. And I enjoyed it. It was a laugh. Didn't think nothing of it. And then end of the night, they were packing away, and I was helping them tidy up cables or whatnot. And Derek turned around and said, "Listen, boys, I've got a couple of potential gigs still in the diary that I was going to cancel because obviously I'm not going to do it anymore. Do you boys want them? Do you want to take over and do this?" And we were like, "Yeah, we do. Yeah, that'd be a laugh."
There's been something in that for you, hasn't there? Saying yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there is a danger. You can say no, and it'll.
But there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with saying no.
No, of course. In fact, I said that on social media today.
You did. I saw your
I
short.
said learn to say no.
Learn to say no.
So saying no is important.
It is.
But equally so, tonight we're being reminded that saying
yes
is also important.
Absolutely.
It also has its weight.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of times when I could have said no to something, and my life would have been incredibly different. If Oz had called me and said, "Do you want to do this show?" and I'd have gone, "Nah,
wouldn't be here. Wouldn't be here today. What would it look like?
I have no idea.
No,
I have absolutely no idea. Wouldn't have met Nathan. Wouldn't have met Helen. Probably wouldn't be married. Don't know. Where would I be? What would I be doing? Where would I be living? I've no idea. My life would have been completely different.
So it's on that one phone call and that one yes with Oz when he phoned you up and said, "Get in this play if you can," and you went yes. All of that transpired from that moment, didn't it?
Yeah, where I am now, with everything that I've got at this point in time, is all as a result.
You could
of saying yes.
link back to that yes or no decision.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. But yeah, as I say, that was 15, 16
So then you had another yes or no moment.
Yeah.
Because really, that was jumping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd performed in front of people, like we said. Do you know what I mean? I'd been on stage, and I'd been a professional clown.
You didn't really know what you were doing.
No, not a clue. I never knew what I was doing anyway.
No.
You speak to anyone who's been on stage with me, they'll know. You'll know. I never knew what I was doing. I just made it up as I went along, much to people's disgust a lot of the time. But yeah, I'd always kind of winged it. But I was like, I could wing this as well. That's not a problem. So yeah, we got together. We changed the name, changed it from Free Beer to Me and Him. Chris and Derek used to sit down to play, and they used to use mini discs to put backing tracks and stuff on. We decided we were going to stand up, and we were going to use digital tracks rather than MIDI disc tracks. Chris had a studio set up at the time with a MIDI keyboard and drum kit and whatnot. So the first few gigs we did, we went in and we recorded backing tracks in MIDI because that's all we had access to. And again, I say it's all we had access to. Man, how lucky we were that when Derek decided he didn't want to do it anymore and handed it over to me and Chris, he handed everything over. We had a PA, we had microphones, we had amplifiers. We didn't have to go out and get anything.
So you were given a real kind of
we
boost,
were given
weren't you?
a whole gig box. There was no reason why we couldn't go out and do a gig. We had all of the equipment just gifted to us. And and I think back now and just go, how lucky was that? Do you know what I mean? We didn't have to scramble around. We didn't have to go and find bits. We didn't have to. There was no outlay. I had a guitar. Chris had a guitar. Do you know what I mean? It was everything just kind of fell into place. But yeah, so we were recording these tracks, backing tracks. I played a little bit of bass, and a little bit of guitar. Chris played keyboard. He's a very good drummer. And between us, we cobbled together some backing tracks, and we got a gig. And it kind of went from there. And we've just been repeating the same old rubbish every single weekend.
but really enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. I thoroughly enjoy it. Yeah, it's. I don't see, from my point of view, there's not, I don't see a big divide. There's no big line between performing on stage and singing a song. You're doing the same thing. You're entertaining a crowd of people who want to be entertained. You're either doing that through theatre, you're doing that through musical, or you're doing that through playing and singing a song. It's the same process. And going back to gratification again, I'm getting the same gratification from that process.
Yeah. So what about moving into the world of podcasting then?
So, yeah.
Let's give it a plug as we break into this moment.
Yeah,
The podcast called Me
and Him podcast.
Yeah.
On Spotify. Yeah, we've been talking about doing it for ages and ages and ages. And
what sparked that? What sparked?
So, when we're setting up the gear at the beginning of a gig, or when we're packing it away at the end of a gig, normally there'll just be us in a room. If you're doing like a function or something like that, we'll be the only ones in the room. We're setting the stuff up and we just ramble and we natter and we talk about
banter.
Absolutely banter. We talk about absolute rubbish. We quote movie lines at each other. We play silly little quizzes, and we've always done it. And it's almost like a little warm-up routine. Do you know what I mean? We have a bit of banter between us. We wind each other up. We have a bit of a laugh. And then we do the gig. And that carries over into the gig. Like I said, we're there to entertain people. And that's what we want to do.
And that's what you've done one episode and one episode?
Yeah, one episode.
Yeah, and it is entertaining.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Very much appreciated.
It's a different thing to this, what I'm doing here. It's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
It's your thing as an entertainer.
Yeah.
I listened to it and I chuckled, I laughed. I was sitting there in the car listening to you two debate and I was like, this is funny. This has got legs. Episode 1, you're knocking it out of the park.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we were like, often we'd say, oh man, we should just record this. We should just record this because this is
even if it's for your own humour.
Exactly. Just for us to listen back to another stage and go, what were we talking about?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so we've been talking about it for ages, but yeah, we finally decided to do it. So yeah, if you want to hear two older men talking absolute rubbish about absolutely nothing, then feel free to search for the Me and Him podcast on Spotify. Have a listen, have a share. Have a like, gratification.
like and subscribe and all of that. Yeah, of course.
See, I can't help it. I've got to break the fourth wall.
No,
every
of
time,
course.
mate.
They're there. They're out there. There might be one or two. Hello. I think it's just my mum that watches these. I'm being serious. I think I'll wave at my mum now. Hello, mum.
I've been watching them.
Yeah. Yes, you've been watching them.
Yeah. If it wasn't for these people out there watching this, then there wouldn't be as much point in us doing this, would there? We'd still get gratification for it because we're connecting.
Yes and no, because this connection for me is special.
Yeah, absolutely.
This for me now.
Yeah.
Like we said at the beginning, I haven't seen you in 8-10 years.
A decade.
Yeah. Easy. Right, tonight, me and you sitting down, saying hello to each other. Like, that's special. Yeah. We're going to keep the camera rolling, but we could turn it off and carry on chatting. And this is a lovely moment.
It would still be special for us.
Yeah, exactly. It's two-ended. There is the side of it that we're doing for others to maybe be entertained, but we're also doing it for ourselves, which is sweet as well. Listen to your podcast. I loved also as well the little pre thing that you did on social media. Like you said, we're going to do this. Does anyone have any suggestions of what we should talk about, or got any questions?
Any questions? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because if we hadn't have done that, it literally would have just been us rambling on about nothing. But
you gave it a bit of structure.
I thought we can't just walk into this completely blind because we'll end up it'll go off on a tangent and it won't be anything that we can put out on Spotify. It would just be completely pointless. So yeah, we wanted a bit of structure to it. So let's throw the question out on our social media pages. Let's get some questions in, some subjects in, things that people want to hear, and we got a complete random bunch of suggestions and questions, all of which you will hear on that podcast. And there are some genuinely random questions on there. Mm-hmm. How do we feel about the pedestrianisation of Norwich City Centre? How do we feel about cheese and its place in the world? Do you know what I mean? All these questions that everybody needs answering.
And we all need to know.
We all need to know the answers. Yeah.
You try and get to the bottom of it.
Absolutely. Whether or not we actually succeed in that is another question. But yeah, we try. So yeah. Keep an eye out. If you don't follow us already, we are on Facebook as Me and Him. Mm-hmm. So if you type that into your search bar on Facebook, you'll see a Simpsonized version of me and Chris.
Yeah.
That's our page. Feel free to like the page. Our upcoming gigs are on there as well if you fancy coming to watch a gig. Just saying.
Yeah, I'm going to be there. I think I best. Like, the next time you do, when it's local.
Yes.
Yeah, is there a local one coming up?
Literally over the road, mate. Literally over the road.
Yeah, give me a nudge, and I won't have any excuse not to be there.
But go and like the page. You'll see the link to the podcast on there if you can't see it on Spotify, and have a listen through there. But yeah, we're hoping to get together again pretty soon to do episode 2. Probably going to do a similar thing again, chuck some suggestions out and see what people want to hear. Mm-hmm. And then we'll take it from there.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Is it always just going to be the two of you?
No, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
If people want to come on, if people want to be guests, then just let us know. If you want to come on and join in and become part of the madness, then feel free. It was never designed to just be us. It was always going to be us.
I think the thing with these things as well, it can be kind of like an experimentation. Yeah. See where it takes you. Yeah. Yeah. The places this has been taking me has been very surprising. Yeah. I when I had this idea of doing this, I had a rough idea of where to start, and that was basically it. Yeah. And I'd have never expected where it's taking me at the moment. So no, well done and congratulations. Like I say, I'll keep watching and I will share on all my stuff as well.
Thank you, man.
But
mutual. I will share the hell out of it.
And I've really enjoyed listening to your story and your journey.
Thank you, man.
But just to wrap this up, tell me a little bit about the value in saying yes then.
So like we said earlier on, I know we touched on it earlier on, I think it's important to understand when yes is important and when no is important. There is a distinction between the two, but I think saying yes will often get you into a position that you want to be in. Because if you are saying maybe, you don't want to do it. If somebody says to you, oh, do you want to do this? And you go, nah, maybe. That's a no. You might as well just say no. Because if you're not sure, then you don't want to do it. Because if somebody asks you a question and you go, yeah, well, that's a line, isn't it? Mm-hmm. If you're willing to say yes to that because you want to do that, then that will take you in the direction that you want to go, because you know that that's where you want to go.
And how good is that, finding that direction of where you want to go?
It's amazing. It's the best feeling. Best thing. Like I said, I wouldn't be in the position I am now. I wouldn't have the things I have now. I certainly wouldn't have the family that I have now if it wasn't for saying yes.
Beautiful. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me.
No, thank you for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's been lovely seeing you.
And you.
And thank you all for listening or watching. If there's anyone watching, we truly do appreciate it.
You're joining. You're all important.
We appreciate you joining this conversation. But I'll just wrap this up now with saying, if you'd like to find out more about the BTS Creative Academy, you can just search
BTS Creative Academy. Yeah.
And you'll find out more. And so that you don't miss out on any future conversations, don't forget to like
and share
and subscribe. Wonderful.
Subscribe,
Thank you. Gratification's what we need.
Yeah. Me and him podcast. Go search it.
Yes, me and him. Thank you. Lovely. That was the BTS Creative Academy podcast, Uncut.